Hello, my name is Jennifer Green, and I will be discussing the development of online courses, a review of Chapter 10 from Theory and Practice of Online Learning. How many times have you wondered just who designed your class? Have you ever been in a class that did not meet your basic expectations? Have you sat in class for hours wondering if the instructor really knew what they were doing? Can you imagine the same in an online environment? This chapter attempts to create a framework around which you can grow your online course development. It makes it very clear that to have an engaging, collaborative, fulfilling course, you need to involve active course design following established design principles, involve the instructors in the process, support the instructors, and create units that are detailed, concise, and user-friendly. Internet-based instruction is the new frontier of education, and as such needs to gain the support of students, faculty, and administration in order to be successful. The next slides will define online education and deal with the need to sustain a sound pedagogy while supporting the faculty delivering the course. Although there is no standard definition of what makes up an online course, there are basically two categories: courses that are primarily text-based and courses that are designed specifically for distribution in an online setting. Early courses were text-based. Basically, they took the books, transferred them to the computer, and you read them there. They were cost-effective, but it did not lend itself well to multimodal, computer-mediated instructional means that are available and only used other interactive elements as add-ons. Newer development models include learning management systems such as Moodle, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, and eLearning 2.0. Faculty need to feel comfortable in order to teach online. They need the same standards applied to their online courses as those applied to traditional courses. The author suggested that one way for faculty to become familiar with the skills and resources needed to be successful online teachers is to become online learners themselves. The authors break down the development of online courses by discussing the principal agents and internet resources that can be incorporated. The course development team needs to be a centralized unit. Examples of internet resources include reusable objects and Web 2.0. In conclusion, the authors wrote, developing effective instructional materials depends on a great deal of planning, collaboration, and concerted efforts between many people skilled in using the right tools. I feel that the authors did a very good job in outlining the steps necessary in creating a team to develop online courses. I especially like their emphasis on developing courses using input from instructional media developers. I have taught a course on Moodle where the lessons were just chapters cut and pasted into a unit with students expected to read and answer quiz questions. Although this class did what it was supposed to do, it was very boring, and I felt that there should have been more interactivity and collaboration. This class took place before I began grad school, so now I know what I could have done better to create an online environment for my students. The strengths of this chapter surrounded the author's detailed analyses and description of the parts necessary to create an online course. The authors detailed those things that are needed not only to develop an interactive, engaging environment, but also the supports needed for the teacher. There was a great discussion on the personnel needed to create the online environment and the roles that they would play in its creation. These steps would have definitely helped me when I was modifying and using Moodle for my class. I can now see the errors I made and how I could have better equipped myself and my students for the course. If anything, the weakest part of this chapter was that although steps in online learning development were discussed, implementation of these steps was not addressed. For instance, how could you use Blackboard to implement your classes? What would you add? What tools would be available? I do know that it was not the author's intent to include all of this information, but a reference to how to implement the suggested practices would have greatly improved the text. Additional information that the authors did not cover that I thought would be helpful would be a section on community building and administrative support. The author stated in the beginning that it was the needs of the students, teachers, and administration that needed to be dealt with that should drive the design and development of the online classes. However, very little is said about the need to create community within the course. Community plays a greater role in online courses than has been suggested by the authors. In addition, measures that you could use in order to best meet the needs of institutional administrators would have been helpful. I am currently working on multimedia tools to help the schools that I serve. These include videos, podcasts, collaborative networks, and presentations to help both schools and my colleagues. I now have a framework and pedagogical resource that I can use to create the products I need to complete my project. I feel confident that if I should ever need to teach my Moodle class in the future, I would be able to better create an interactive and collaborative environment for my students. The author's chapter served as an excellent guide in design, and it sheds light on many of the areas that I need to work on to improve my design capabilities. When I first began reading this chapter, I must admit that it was both intriguing and boring at the same time. I was interested in the ideas, but the author's style of writing was not very exciting. I soon came to discover that the authors were simply being factual, and that this delivery method was the best way to get the multiple and complex ideas across the most efficient way possible. I learned a great deal from this chapter, and I look forward to putting these recommendations into place.